The University of the Southern Caribbean is hosting its Research Day. To tell us all about it, we have the Director, Department of Research and Innovation, Dr. Suzanne Chan, and also the Dean of Social Sciences, my former Dean, and Associate VP for Academic Administration, Dr. Edward Clark. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
What is USC's Research Day all about?
USC's Research Day is an annual event, and we have it in the Charter Week, University's Charter Week. That's the week we commemorate the time when university got its university status by ACTT. So we celebrate that, and it's an annual event, and it's a platform where we encourage faculty, staff, and students to showcase their scholarship and research work with the USC community. And we also invite the public to be part of our Research Day. Yeah.
What is the theme for this year?
Okay, this year is a very exciting theme. We have health and violence at crossroads. Generally, we have seen health in its entity and violence as a separate entity, but we want to look at the intersection because a lot of research has been done, and it's very well researched that violence do have impact on the health and well-being of persons. And these are also in line with the SDG goals, our Sustainable Development Goals. Number 3, which talks about well-being of the citizens, and number 16, which says about creating strong institution, peace, and justice. So we are focusing on those Sustainable Development Goals, and our USC also stand for wellness and well-being. It's one of our strategic plan at USC. So we are trying to highlight those development goals and our strategic plan and involve students, sensitizing them about the burning issues in the region and globally.
Yeah. Dr. Clark, how do you feel about this particular theme in light of what we are currently facing in society?
Well, this is a very important and necessary topic for us to investigate. As you know, the issue in our beautiful country surrounds violence towards women and children in particular. It doesn't mean that men don't experience violence as well, but I think that women and children experience a disproportionate amount of violence, as we have seen in our daily newspapers. And so we need to tackle this issue, and I mean, it has been tackled before, but we want to engage as wide a community as possible. And in addition to that, one of the issues that we are looking at, and I'm particularly interested in, is the psychology of violence. Why is it that people are so violent? What is going on in their heads? What's going on in their families? There are certain, what we might consider antecedent factors. There's certain things that happens to individuals in homes, in families, in society, that create this sense of wanting to lash out, and not to be more emotionally intelligent. And so that's something that we are very concerned about, and we want to examine that within the day or two that we are going to have for this research.
Dr. Clark, another important thing we've been hearing even in the news reports, a lot of the times we're wondering now whether it is that men have that avenue through which they can vent or even receive counseling. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, men are very reluctant to talk about the issues. And one, it's a male thing, and predominantly, African male thing. It's also a cultural thing. Within the Caribbean, we don't like to talk about our problems. Our problems are our problems. We keep them to ourselves, and so it's nobody's business. So we have grown up with that attitude towards issues and problems, and therefore men don't manage their emotions as well as women. Women tend to talk about it, they'll cry about it, and they get rid of the emotions. Men tend to bottle it up, and that's why we find that more men commit suicide than women, even though more women will attempt, more men will actually commit suicide because they don't deal with the emotions. And we also have in our society a lot of frustration, a lot of unfulfilled goals among men, because in our society today, we find that women tend to be more successful, they tend to have better jobs, they have higher levels of matriculation, et cetera, et cetera. So some men do feel emasculated. And in addition to that, we have, you know, a lot of the jobs that were formerly filled by men are now filled by women. And so there are lots of issues.
Now, as the Dean of the Social Sciences Department at the University of the Southern Caribbean, you know, what role do you think parents have to play in all of this?
Well, parents play a very important role. It's, you know, how do we socialize our children, especially our boys? What kind of values are we giving them? It's quite interesting that the high number of young men who grow up with absent fathers. Fathers are not there. They don't grow up with the knowledge of how to treat young women because there's not a man in the house and they can model to see how he treats their mother. So there's this gap. So you find that even in counseling men, you find that they grow up, there's absent fathers, and it's quite high. And that has a significant impact. They don't know how to express emotions and affections. A lot of them feel, you know, somehow disadvantaged, and they feel that there's still this feeling of entitlement and wanting to fulfill male roles, but they're unable to do that because they don't have the necessary resources. And it's quite interesting because when I grew up, I mean, men were the ones who got all the scholarships, who won all the awards and so on. And it's interesting how things have changed over the years. Yeah.
And Dr. Chan, could you provide us with a breakdown of the agenda and also some of the speakers?
Yeah, so we have an opening ceremony. The event is taking place on March the 14th, and we begin at 9 a.m. in the morning. Our guest of honor is, we have invited our local consular, who is Honorable Martin Gonzalez. Since he's our own representative in that area, so we felt it very apt for him to be there, to be present at the opening ceremony. So we have a segment on opening ceremony, and then we have a keynote speaker who's coming all the way from Ohio, and he's Dr. Christ Roy Cheris. He's an internal medicine hospitalist and medical director for addiction services at the University Hospital Medical Center, Ohio. So he's coming with a wealth of experience, a young person, and he specializes in addiction studies and emergency care unit. So he will bring the focus of his presentation will be intersection of drugs and crime. So it's going to be very interesting, and he's coming here to do that presentation. And then in the evening, during the day, we have series of presentations where students and faculty are presenting their research that they have done over the past year. So every academic year, it culminates on a research. So they are presenting their research, and there will be poster presentations too. And we have faculty and students from different departments and schools presenting the perspective. So we're not just looking at health and violence from one aspect, but we are looking from the School of Humanities and Education, how they view it. We have an interesting paper from the School of Theology, and they're looking at the exegetical, research on the Bible verse in Proverbs that says, sparing the rod. So it's going to be an interesting presentation. It will be argumentative, but as exegetical to show what it really meant when the Bible verse are always used out of context, spare the rod and spare the rod and spoil the child. So that's going to be interesting. And the evening segment, we have a very interesting panel discussion. And one of the panelists is our own chairman of Children's Authority, Mr. Hanif Benjamin. And he comes with a wealth of experience. And he's a child traumatologist, a clinical social worker. And his topic will be trauma over the lifespan. So what happens with the children when they experience trauma, the childhood experience? It has impact in the later adulthood. So it's looking at trauma over the lifespan. And that's something we need to also understand, that these traumatic experiences have, lead to violent behaviors, because there are many factors we don't know exactly what, but these are areas that we are approaching from. And a panel discussion in the evening is going to highlight those things. And there is also a topic on child victimization, which our own sociologist, Professor Dr. Letroy Cummins, he has done very wide research on intimate partner violence in Guyana, and his recent publication has been on child victimization. So we are having a range of topics that we are discussing through the day, and we culminate in the evening from 5 to 6:30 is the panel discussion, and public is invited to come and be part of it, and even be part of a day presentation where students are presenting their research work to encourage, students do the work under the mentorship of the lecturers, and it's a prime day for them to present their findings on the research that they have been doing.
When you reflect on past open days that you've had and research days, would you say it has been a tremendous success, and what has it achieved so far?
Yes, it has been a tremendous success because the whole community looks forward for the day, and we address burning issues in the country, sensitize our own community on these issues. The past years that I have been as a research director, we looked at the university in focus. So the role of university environment on shaping the lives, attitudes, and perceptions of students when they go out in the world of work. And we had some very good key speakers. We had Professor Theodore, who came and did a presentation. And then we had the mind. We looked at the mind of the scholars, what happens in the mind of the person, okay? And the whole psychology, the whole emotion, the whole even spiritual aspects are taken care of it. So what you feed to the mind, it has its manifestation in different ways. So we had in the past Professor Jerome Delay as our keynote speaker and Professor Theodore. So we have been having a very productive, and students have been benefited through these interactions, and also seeing their peers present. It's a lot of support, and the research work goes a long way. It does not just culminate with your degree and you're done. But after your degree is done, you're still engaging in research. You're still investigating problems, finding solutions, human solutions, interventions that will bring, the national cause, right, for the national cause.
Dr. Clark, what are some of the other topics that particularly stood out to you in terms of putting together this particular event?
Well, the topics that are very interesting relates to, like I said, the psychology of violence.
Yes.
And we have programs that are quite interesting in terms of relating to that. For instance, we have a BS in psychology with an emphasis on forensic psychology. We have another program, BS Psychology, with an emphasis on health. Mm-hmm. And we also have a behavioral science degree that looks at organizational behavior. So that the whole topic of psychology, the psychology of violence, is really an outcome of some of the research programs, the academic programs that we offer. Of course, we have a master's in counseling psychology, yes, which is very well subscribed, and also a master's in education psychology. And in these programs, we look at the kinds of issues that individuals have to deal with on a daily basis, and how they can find some assistance. Because we spoke earlier about the fact that men in particular don't like to come to counseling.
Yes.
So we have a range of programs that would assist the professionals when they qualify to be able to cope with individuals who have these problems. And then we have two very interesting programs. We have one that deals with early scholars, where we are bringing young persons in Form 4 and 5 into the institution, and we are training them on various fundamental courses like English and maths and science, and so as to prepare them and for the entrance into university because we find that very often students come to us and they lack certain competencies. And when they do these courses, they get credits. So those credits are then used to assist them to get into the programs at a skill level that will negate them having to struggle in the first years.
Okay.
And finally, we have a very interesting
Sure.
program, which is the first in the region. We have a master's in occupational therapy. There's no other program like that in the whole of the Caribbean region. And we have just introduced a very interesting certificate in paralegal studies with an emphasis on issues of health and HR, land and conveyancing, etc. So we are looking forward to very dynamic programs going forward. Yes.
What are your closing comments? What would you like to tell members of the public who probably would perhaps be thinking about attending this event?
Well, I would like to encourage the community in the Valley, because we live in that community and we want to engage the community in the activities of the university. I would like to tell the wider community that this is an opportunity to attend here and participate in some of the programs that we offer. Also to make their contribution, because we'll have an open session where we will have an open discussion. And we are hoping that the outcome of that will be some document that we can publish and that we could give to those individuals in the social services and in the government to just sort of be more sensitive of what's happening in the community at large.
So instead of putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms, you're looking at addressing the issue from the very core.
Yes. Yeah.
Dr. Chan, your closing comments?
Well, I agree with Dr. Clark, and we are inviting the public to be part of it. And in future, we want to have a segment for the public where we invite them to present papers, share their research and scholarship with us, and we have a very interactive session and have more of open forum. So we also have a give and take thing. So we invite the public to be part of a research day, and that's why we are here talking about it and inviting them to be there March the 14th. That's our day we have for this year.
Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you.
All right, so we've been chatting with Dr. Suzanne Chan and Dr. Edward Clark of the University of the Southern Caribbean on their research day.